Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig, where we talk about all things firearms, firearms policy, politics, culture, media. You name it, we're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. So please take a moment, like and share the program so that your friends can join in the conversation. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. Something new, make sure you're following us on Instagram. And also, in the case of Facebook and YouTube, make sure you hit the notification button so that you can get notified as soon as we go live. That way you can participate in the live chat, once again, as the show is going on. Also, please take a moment, visit FPCgear.com. That's FPCgear.com. Folks, that's in part how we pay the bills. Why? Because that's the place where you find all sorts of cool Pro 2A swag, t-shirts, coffee mugs, hoodies, stickers, you name it. And every dollar that you spend there goes right back into the fight for our right to keep and bear arms. So you can support the Second Amendment and you can look good doing it. It's FPCgear.com. All right, folks, you know we're here in Washington, D.C., and we had on just the other day, we had on with us Matt, who is now heading up the legal policy section of the Firearms Policy Coalition. And I wanted to have Matt back on the program today because I wanted him to talk about some of the other areas, some of the other legal briefs and whatnot and white papers that they're writing in order to help, once again, policymakers here better understand the issues that we're fighting here in Washington, D.C. So, Matt, once again, welcome to the program.
Always good to see you.
Fantastic. So, tell us just a little bit about some of the areas that you guys have written and will be writing white papers on for FPC.
Well, I mean, right now, of course, we're focused on the things that you've been hearing about in the news: universal background checks, assault weapon bans, and we just got our red flag paper out, which you should definitely check out. These are all things that are, important to be addressed. And then as we get through those, we're going to cover everything else that you can think of, related to your right to keep and bear arms.
All right. So, I mean, I think one of the things that's really neat about this and what I like about this is kind of twofold. Number one is we're seeing that more and more policymakers are either they don't know or they are ignoring facts when it comes to instituting some of these policies. So it's good to have these white papers and this emphasis because, it helps to inform them with data-driven facts.
Right.
But also, as I see it, is realizing that in many cases, these are things that, as they ignore those policies, these are things that are eventually going to have to be fought in court. And to be able to lay out that legal argument, I think is vitally important.
Right. Yeah. They stuff like red flag laws, stuff like universal background checks. They think that what they're doing is, we're going to do this and it's going to stop mass shooters. Well, it's not. No, it's not going to only apply to mass shooters, mass murderers. These laws are generally applicable. They apply to everyone in the entire nation. So you can't write a law for one specific thing. If that was effective, we wouldn't be worrying about this at all because murder has been illegal since ever.
Right.
So we've already covered all of our bases there. This is them trying to, they want to do something. There's always a push. You have to do something.
Something.
You have to do something. You've got to do something. Mm-hmm. Well, so then they do something, and basically what they're doing is, now we're going to make it extra double super duper illegal.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they don't realize that in doing that, they've swept in a whole new class of people that are now going to be criminals. And it's as if our criminal code wasn't large enough. I mean, you can wind up in prison for catching a lobster that's too small. Like, do we really need more criminal laws on the books? Is that what we need?
Well, okay, so let me give a great example. One of their go-tos is universal background checks. Mm-hmm. Why are universal background checks a bad idea?
Well, it's another thing, it makes sense to people, right? People like the way it sounds. But it's, again, you go right through just that top layer. You get right through the top. You scratch the surface, it's no good.
Sounds good on paper.
Mm-hmm. And also, for one thing that's very important, most of the murderers that have been studied got their weapon with a background check, and if they couldn't pass a background check, they would purchase it underground. All right? So off the bat, we know that changing the background check regime won't change anything, with these situations that the politicians are purporting to address. That said, what it will change is, let's say, here's a hypothetical situation. Let's say, there's there's been break-ins in my neighborhood, and I've got a neighbor who's like a single woman, living alone. She's very concerned, and I know her. I know she's not a felon, everything like that. I know she's legal to own a gun, and I just put a handgun on the table and I say, just hold on to this. You know how to use it. I taught you how to use it. Just hold on to this until everything blows over. Let me ask you a question. Should I go to jail? If the answer is no, then you might see what we see when it comes to universal background checks.
And by the way, that's exactly how it is in the state of California.
Exactly. Yep.
Which means that if someone doesn't have time to go through all the process in order to purchase a firearm, so from the time in which an individual goes to purchase a firearm and the time they're legally allowed to have it, they're unprotected.
Right.
And so I couldn't legally loan someone loan them a firearm. Otherwise I would be a criminal and they would be in illegal possession of a firearm.
Right. And when you need a firearm for defensive use for the worst moment of your life, which is something that can come up at any second. So when I see that my neighbor's in a bad position, when I see that it doesn't matter, your husband, your wife, your daughter, your son, and you feel that they need to have a mechanism to defend themselves, they need it now. Mm-hmm. And it's not only that, it's not only about the waiting. People are saying, oh, what are the chances, okay, whatever. Let's say, we're neighbors again, and, we are your average American, and we're just scraping by, we don't have that much money, and I want to lend you my handgun. Just lend it to you for the weekend because, it's been dangerous. You're going to put it on us now to pay a fee? Mm-hmm. Because we have to compensate the dealer. Mm-hmm. You're going to put it on us now to pay a fee just for us to, the firearm isn't being transferred, it's just being lent. So I pay a fee going to you, and then we pay one going straight back to me. Mm-hmm. Is that the incentive structure we want to set up? Well,
let's take it even further. What if I'm going through a tough time and I believe that it's probably better for me not to have firearms because maybe I've had suicidal thoughts, right? Mm-hmm. I can't just give you my firearm for you for safekeeping because you haven't gone through a background check, we haven't gone through a legal transfer. In many cases, under universal background checks, that would create a problem.
Exactly. And universal means universal. And so when you say the word universal, just assume it's going to cover everything. Just assume it means that in my example where I give my neighbor the gun, it means I go to jail. Just assume that in his example, he's been having suicidal thoughts or whatever. And when do you have those kinds of things go on with you? Late at night, right? If you get a bad text, a bad, reaction, a bad doctor's diagnosis, and it's 10 p.m., and you're saying, Matt, I want you to hold on to this right now. Do you want that? Should we both go to jail?
Right.
No.
Right.
It might sound simple, but it's bad policy, and it's going to harm the people who need weapons the most, which is our most vulnerable parts of society.
Exactly. So, all right, let's go to another go-to for them. Let's say we need to ban these evil assault weapons.
Oh yes, the assault weapons.
Folks, don't get mad. I'm just saying that because that's their. I'm sorry. I forgot to do my air quotes. Assault weapons.
Right. And so I'm kind of and you guys might not like this, but I'm of the opinion that we should own the term assault weapons. It doesn't mean anything, right? Yeah. So a lot of you guys will know the history of what the term. There's only a few guns that really can be called assault weapon because that's their name. But assault rifle. But whatever. We know what they're talking about. We know they're talking about intermediate cartridge short rifles. They're talking about things like the AR-15 all the way to the Daewoo K2 and the FAMAS. We know what they're talking about. I don't think it's really useful to sit there and embattle, it's not an assault weapon because it doesn't have this or it's not select fire. Because when you do that, what you're arguing is that there are weapons that are assault weapons and that's okay to regulate. Mm-hmm. Whereas, in my opinion, you have a right to have all of those weapons. The Constitution doesn't say the right to keep and bear some arms. It says the right to keep and bear arms. So be cautious of that when you talk about assault weapons. So assault weapons are typical, useful, modern firearms that have been adopted, in similar forms, usually select fire by militaries. But then so the anti-gun crowd, the gun control crowd, will say, the military adopts it because it's designed to kill. Well, is that true? right? No, the military and police use a firearm for the same reason that you do. They pick it because it is cost effective, it is reliable, and robust and easy to use. That's why that's why our armed forces have picked the M16 platform and the AR derivatives thereof. That's why other countries have picked similar weapons, because they work. And so, should it be that because a weapon works really well that you shouldn't be able to use it for self-defense? No. People argue that they're more deadly and dangerous. It's not true. The energy of a weapon is a matter of science. It's not a matter of magic. And these weapons are in between a typical rifle and a handgun. Mm-hmm. So but you guys all know all that data. You guys know all that stuff. But it always comes tied hand in hand with magazines. Mm-hmm. And people will say, well, why do you need this and that? Not to mention that they have this Hollywood. They have these two conflicting Hollywood ideas. One, they think that you need a massive rate of fire.
Right.
Okay. But then two, they think that each shot is enough to, take someone down. Do those really add up? And in fact, I wrote something a while ago where I took a lot of data from internal medicine studies about penetrating wounds, and then also data from Police Sciences Journal about typical force-on-force engagements, and we came to the a rough, this isn't hard scientific, but a rough estimate that the average number of rounds that's needed from a pistol or an intermediate cartridge to reliably stop an attacker is 12.
Wow.
It's 12 rounds. And so, and that would kind of make sense, right? You can kind of imagine that, because one, your hit probability is not 100%. It's far from that. And then when you do hit, lethality is like 19%. So, when you think about it that way, it's, should I have enough rounds in a magazine to be able to reliably defend myself against two home intruders? I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to say. But even without that, right? Even if it was the case, it doesn't matter, because it's illegal to use your weapon unlawfully. And so is somebody who shoots up, who murders a bunch of people, are they going to be discouraged from doing that because they're going to tack an extra 5 years or extra 25 years on top?
Well, and it's just always funny when it comes to in particular with magazines, it's like how arbitrary the number 10 or 7 is. It's like, okay, so why is 10 all of a sudden, why is 10 better than 15?
Yeah.
Or 20. Or better than 17, or better than 20 in terms of reducing the lethality, as they like to say. I don't understand why 10 is the number, but what I do know is this, is that when they talk about it, they don't talk about, for example, the 7 or 16 or 17 round magazines. They don't talk about the 20 round. They always go to the 100 round drum because, well, that's because once again, they're sensationalizing. Because that's what they do. Like when they talk about limiting the number of firearm purchases. Yeah. They never say, well, a person, they never talk about the person who buys 3 firearms in a month. They talk about the person, they always talk about some guy who went and bought 100 lowers, right? Because once again, they're sensationalizing and governing by anecdote.
Right.
Instead of actually dealing with the policy. Now, there's one other item, and we were talking about it just the other day, that is kind of tangential.
Well, actually, before we go on to that, I also want to stress in terms of the magazine capacity. This is something that people always leave out. If you are a evil person and you are planning to do an atrocity, and you have 10 rounds in your magazine, what are you going to do? You're going to bring spares, right? If you're a person who has a gun by the bedstand, or who carries a gun, do you generally think? I know that like a lot of you guys, I never leave the house without 3 mags, right? That's awesome. My pant size isn't that big. So, most people who use guns defensively only have 1 mag. So is that to say that people who are solely defensively use their arms should be at a distinct disadvantage from, somebody who's planning it? Or should they have whatever means they choose? They could have a bigger gun that holds less rounds, a smaller gun that holds more rounds. Should they be able to make that choice for themselves?
Yes, in fact, they should. I always say that someone who's going out to commit a crime They're not concerned about whether or not the firearm that they're purchasing is, in California's case, on the roster.
Yeah.
They're not worried about whether or not it's defined as an assault weapon.
Yeah.
And they're damn sure not going to be worried about how many rounds the magazine. In fact, they're going to go out of their way to get a magazine that will hold as many rounds as they can.
Or just as many as they can, which
Right.
is like what happened in my home state at the Parkland. It was 10-round mags.
Right.
Didn't make a difference.
Definitely did not make a difference. But I want to talk about that tangential issue that relating to sporting rifles.
Okay, so this is an interesting one, and so you guys might have noticed. Some of you older guys, who might have been into the gun scene a while ago, might remember when you could get, AKs and like other different cool semi-automatic rifles for cheap, for like $300. Like an SKS used to be like $150, and then all of a sudden that changed. Now the market's gone crazy. Well, no law changed over that period of time. What changed was how the administration, the president, or a series of presidents, have wanted to think about it. So you have to go all the way back to 1968 with the Gun Control Act. And there was a provision about the importation of firearms, and this was specifically designed. And again, this is before the Supreme Court, heard Keller and declared an individual right to keep and bear arms, despite that right existing for hundreds of years.
Right. Because I like to believe that thou shalt not infringe seemed pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like you had to say it. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue.
But so the Gun Control Act, Congress saw that most gun crimes were committed with these inexpensive imported handguns from France and Italy and Spain, and they were called Saturday Night Specials. And these were usually 25 auto guns that had no sights on them, and you could buy them for super cheap back then. So the Gun Control Act banned that. It set it had certain criteria on what handguns would be allowed to put in, and it was designed specifically for the handguns. Now, as an aside, that was a humongous failure, because after they put in that law and it became harder and harder to get these inexpensive European handguns, the next cheapest guns they weren't 25s anymore, they were 380s and 9mm. So the actual, the amount of gun violence didn't go down, but the lethality went up. Because 25 auto,
Right.
People would survive multiple hits to the chest at 7 feet.
Right.
And Congress saved us from that. Congress saved us from that, and instead, had criminals shooting each other with full power rounds. But so we move forward. The law said, and the law respecting handguns was written very vaguely, and it said firearms with a sporting purpose. So this is why the handguns had to have adjustable sights and all this stuff. Still to this day, any handgun that or most handguns that you get imported have to follow all these criteria. Well, they started to fine-tune things a little bit, and in 1989, Bush Sr. came forth and wanted to basically stop anything that was an assault weapon from coming in. Right. So they just dreamed up and made up factors and told the ATF, stop letting people import weapons that basically don't look like your dad's hunting rifle. And that's why the price of all these weapons have gone up, and that's why you can't get a weapon without a U.S. made receiver. And tomorrow, if he wanted to, the president could fix that.
So in other words, he pulled a FUD and decided, well, I support, or as my friend over at Arms Room Radio likes to say, Second Amendment but. So in other words, he supports the Second Amendment, but we don't need those. We're gonna, if it doesn't look like you said, if it doesn't look like your dad's hunting rifle, you don't really need it.
Right.
Which and I have to admit, I always say this. I am a card-carrying member of the vast right-wing conspiracy. I wholly admit it. FPC is a nonpartisan organization, and I think it's important because you see instances like this where it was a Republican who actually is the one who was behind this change that put this in place.
Yep.
But now here's something, as you've brought up, is something that the president can do. Doesn't require an act of Congress.
Nope.
It literally, with a stroke of a pen, he can make affordable sporting rifles available to all Americans who can legally own a firearm.
Yep, like not even a stroke of a pen. It could be a phone call. And there's a lot of stuff that's on the books that's like that. A lot of it has to do with importation, but there's so much ATF stuff that is not law, but they treat it like it is, and everybody thinks that it is because nobody even. And we've had some meetings with some of these people, and they didn't even know what we were talking about because nobody talks about this stuff. They just assume that that's the way it is, and that it must be on the books. It's not on the books. It's a policy. It's a gentleman's agreement.
It's and it's funny, and this is what I appreciate about talking with you is that it is amazing how many policymakers. When I say policymakers, I'm not just talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about their staff, people who are writing some of this stuff. Know how little they actually know about the technology and about the policy and how the two intersect. And it's amazing, but these folks are writing law, and some of them, quite frankly, claim to be on our side.
Right. Yep. It happens every day. But the thing is, as we raise awareness, right, and I don't see many other organizations talking about these types of things, but even beyond the scope of the Second Amendment, beyond the scope of your right to bear arms, there's a ton of things that are enforced against you that are just administrative decisions that are not law. And this is we've got a case that one of our associated organizations that have got coming up that's challenging this type of deference to where we're basically asking the court to please say, hey, that's not the law. You can't make it up.
Right.
You can't just have unelected bureaucrats deciding, what to lock people in prison for.
Yeah.
And so keep your eyes on that and spread the word about the ridiculous pumped up fat administrative state.
Oh, most definitely. Okay, so let's go back to conjunction. No, wait, that's wrong one.
Yeah.
Let's go all the way back to I'm just a bill, right?
Right.
Bills are written in the legislative branch, right? That's where laws are made. And the executive oftentimes passes these regulations in order to help implement those laws. But it doesn't, or in some cases clarify, but it's not their job to redefine. And we've seen Republican and Democrat administrations, it's a nonpartisan thing, people actually go in and write new law as regulation. And the thing is that then you have to turn around, you have to challenge it, because once they're allowed to get away with it, the sad part is then the judicial branch says, well, you let them get away with it over here, so why shouldn't they be able to get away with it over here? I've made the argument when it comes to bump stocks. I've said, look, I get it. Most people don't care about bump stocks. But if you're going to allow this president to basically ignore separation of powers to ban something that we don't care about, what's to stop him or a future president from doing the exact same thing to ban something that we do care about?
And again, actually, the way, I'm not saying this is legal, but tomorrow they could, if they wanted to, they could tighten up that sporting purposes test again and say, only flintlock muskets. and no one would say anything. No one would say anything about it. Well, I mean, we would. Right. But we're trying to see if we can raise awareness and talk about these types of things. In fact, you'd be shocked as a gun owner how many of the things that you have to do that you feel responsible to doing, that you feel are compelled to do, are not written down in any law, but are just written in the opinions of some bureaucrats.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? Hey, I just, once again, I want to thank you for all of the work that you do. Tell folks where they can go to find these the white papers as they're being rolled out.
Go to gunpolicy.org, fpcpolicy.org, the FPC websites. Go to our, and for sure, as you know, you might be getting tired of hearing this, but I don't care. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything. We put these things out. We deliver them to you the moment they're done. As soon as they're hot and ready, we put them right there on the shelf for you. And we love engaging with you guys, and really can't thank you enough for the support. It's because of you guys that we're out here raising the alarm bells and trying to move the needle back in our direction. This isn't about expanding our rights. Right. This is about getting it back. Right. Because we don't. There is no expanding the Second Amendment. Right. It's there. It's always been there. It's been taken from us.
Yeah, you folks would be surprised at the number of people that we're meeting about who are hearing a lot of this stuff for the first time. And, this is vitally important. What we're doing here is, number one, informing people who claim to be our allies, but also sending a shot across the bow to those who don't believe in our fundamental rights, to let them know that, look, we believe that the law and the facts are on our side, and we're going to argue this, and we're going to argue this. If we don't win the argument here in this building, well, then there's a court building right down the street that will be arguing it as well.
Yep.
Just saying. Anyway, once again, thank you so much. You guys check out those policy papers as they roll out. Once again, remember to follow us. If you're not following us on Facebook, you need to make sure that you're doing that so that you get alerts when these things come out. Make sure you're following us on Twitter as well, and Instagram and YouTube. We're going to do as much as possible to provide information to you about these papers as they come out, to help break them down. I'll obviously have Matt or one of our other legal team on to talk about each one of those and help you break them down. And the great thing is they're not written in legalese. They're written in language that you and I can break down, understand, and disseminate to others. And that's the key. There are a lot of people who agree with us. They just need more facts and data in order to be able to be solid on this issue. And so once again, thank you for your support. Once again, Matt, I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate you being here and walking the halls of government with us. All right, folks. Well, hey, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program, letting your friends know about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.